I sometimes talk to the band that I've got now, and I've had, most of them for 20 years that we've all been together,
Yep.
about the fact of playing back in the 70s, where we didn't have, in the early part of the 70s, we didn't have monitors. And I
Really?
remember playing, we had speakers in front of us, and they were column speakers, maybe about 2.5 meters high. You'd have two of those either side, and that'd be it. And
Gosh.
so it was completely different. But then when we did, as it progressed, as we did bigger shows, I remember playing with Creedence Clearwater Revival,
Yep.
and it was like they had the big new Jan's PA system. I think it was at Randwick Racecourse, and it was like, and they had these black boxes at the front, which were called monitors, which we'd never seen before. And it was astounding. It was just like, because you're so impressed. I mean, I'm still impressed by the PAs now that they have are just magnificent. They cost, anything up to a couple of $1 million.
But that's amazing. I mean, but it's even more incredible, 10 years before you guys, you had the Beatles doing stadium shows like Shea Stadium with basically an even smaller setup than what you just described. So, everything is progressed from where it was before, but even what you described is incredible. I mean, no monitors. That would almost be a reason for a performer to cancel a show. Or
nowadays, well,
yeah.
they have in-ears and all that sort of stuff. And but even back watching, say, the Beatles perform, as you were saying, in Shea Stadium and some of their gigs, they wouldn't have heard themselves.
No, made worse by the rabid nature of the audience, of the screens.
Exactly.
And even these days, the screen. So even the person way up the back can still get a clear view of the stage. It's a completely different atmosphere now.
Oh, it's just, and how they produce those, what the vision that goes on the screens is so important. I think, it's the camera crews that they have are just so professional. They're just right on it. Fantastic.
When you think back on your days with Sherbet, and so much was made of the Sherbet Skyhooks rivalry, it was almost Ford versus Holden-esque, almost sort of in its, everyone was a fan of one or the other. What are your standout memories of those days, good or bad? What stands out to you?
I think it was all good. We were friends with most bands. And we only got to see each other, like bands at the time, when you played at a gig together, maybe, or more importantly, when you performed on Countdown. It was, that. But with Skyhooks, it was, we actually had them on as support for our Opera House gig back in, might have been 75, 70, around there.
Right.
And that's where I got to know Graham, Shirley Strachan. And I think because we were both apprentices, he was a chippy and I was a fitter and turner. And we both surfed and we both had birthdays very close together. We got on really well and ended up, surfing in Bali together and all that sort of stuff. And
wow.
It was, and there is a funny story. Well, he took us up flying one day with here in Melbourne in a light single engine Cessna. And we were up flying, and he was saying, you know how these things aren't meant to glide. He said, look at this. So he turned the motor off. The propeller stopped. I just sat there and went, gee, that's good. Can we turn that on again?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for showing me. But
but he was a bit of a larrikin, but he was a lovely person.
I remember interviewing him many, many years ago. The thing that stands out when you talk about surfing is that he said that either he wanted to or he actually did. Once he got into helicopters, he would have a mattress in the back of his helicopter so that he would go surfing to all these great surfing beaches and basically just sort of fly in and get permission to park it on an oval or something and almost camp out in that the way one would a panel van or a car or something. It was just this very...
I think it was like that. It was with him, and he also had a boat or like a sailing craft that he would sail around that area, off Noosa and all that middle Queensland area, looking for reefs and things like that. And
Yeah. Just had a really fantastic approach to life. Very positive.
Most definitely.
It's wonderful. Daryl, every time anyone posts a vision of you in concert these days and I guess that's another thing that's changed is that people record everything and, you look out onto a sea of phones. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just a modern development, so be it. But it's always the horses that people love. Were you anticipating that when you recorded or chose to record that song? Were you anticipating that it would become such a signature tune for you?
No, not at all. It was, it's like probably most people, I just, somebody had said to me, Dale or someone, a good friend of mine said, have a listen to that Ricky Lee Jones album. It only came out like 6 months ago. There might be something on there, or have a whatever. And I put it on when I got home, and the first track was The Horses, and I thought, God, that'd be a really good album track. And it reminded me a little bit of, I don't know, maybe like As the Days Go By, because I love that with a passion. But anyway, I took it in, played it the next day to Simon Hussey and Peter Carpin from Sony Music, and they both sort of,
weren't sure.
I think they thought, Daryl's been out on the drink all night and stuff. Anyway, they entertained the thought. Simon put a new twist on it, and we put it, on the album. Then it came out as a single, and it finally got to number one. But I never, ever envisaged that it would become, I guess, as popular with a lot of people.
I bet you wish you wrote it now.
Well, having spoken with Ricky Lee Jones, I didn't say that to her, but I did tell her how important a song it is to a lot of Australians. She got a surprise anyway many years ago when she played it at the Blues Fest at Byron.
Oh yeah.
And she couldn't believe that all the people sang it. And she thought, and then there were times, I think she was telling me, that she had to explain to an audience when she was playing here in Australia that this is my song that I wrote, not Daryl Braithwaite.
That's how you know that it's...
Just in case they thought she was doing a cover,
Yeah. That's great. I remember just being really touched, having grown up with Sherbet in the 70s and, some of the first music that I listened to on the radio. And then to read that you'd pretty much, I don't know if you'd say fallen on hard times, but you were back on the tools before As the Days Go By came out. You told a story, I read a story about just hearing that on the radio for the first time. How much were you wanting to get back to music?
Yes, it was back in the, I guess, the mid-'80s, and I'd been, after Sherbet finished, I'd been doing RSL clubs and things like that with a friend of mine, Johnny Dick, as the drummer, and we go to gigs, and it was really, I didn't enjoy it that much because it wasn't like Sherbet, and it was, I don't know, frustrating. So with the help and the enthusiasm of a couple of people, they said, oh, look, you got to do something else. So anyway, I stopped doing that and then went on the dole and ended up working on with a gang of people up at Sunbury here out of Melbourne, building footpaths and all that sort of stuff. And it was a group of maybe 6 or 8 guys. And, one in particular said, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Because that's what happens when you go on the dole. They find you a job. So I went along and did it and all that. And it was good. It was good fun and all that. But it was the motivation from them too that sort of, when they said, you should be, it was just that feeling I got from them that I was probably letting people down in some small way by doing that and not doing, music, because they had this impression that that's what I did and I should continue on. So anyway, continued writing and all that. And then finally got Simon Hussey. I said, Simon, you've got to produce this thing. We've got some songs. And anyway, to fast forward, we ended up recording this album and it was called Edge. And the first single off it was As the Days Go By. And I remember hearing it on Triple M down here in Melbourne. And I just thought, oh, God. How good does that sound? And with no idea that, it was going to be successful, but the fact was that radio stations around Australia, liked it.
Yeah.
And that was the start of it again.